Tsugaru Shinuchi was an ugly, sadistic, musclehead hybrid Oni who wanted to fight monsters until he died, but his life changed when he met Rindou, an immortal head who forced him to explore the world and solved cases with her, hoping to one day find the man who made him a monster. An event was held in the Meiji era in Tokyo where humans were entertained as monsters performed, and our protagonist was one of those monsters, as he was an Oni slayer who entertained his guests by killing monsters. As our sad protagonist was drowning his sorrow in a bottle, he noticed a figure watching him but thought it was his imagination. The following morning, the Oni slayer was out of drinks, so he went out to get more, as he had nothing else to do with his lonely and sad life. As the Oni slayer strolled through town, he had a brief memory of how he was captured and lost his humanity. And then he came across some dumb people who wanted him to kill a cat they thought was possessed, but refused when he spotted the same figure watching him. Later that night, his main event match was against a cat, which he had to kill. And as he went back to his sleeping quarters, he caught the person stalking him, a maid holding a birdcage who was definitely not suspicious. It was no ordinary maid, as she had skills that would put Sakura to shame. The maid was not playing, as she brought a gun to a fistfight, and the Oni slayer had no choice but to face her with a bottle of beer. She proved to be a strong opponent, but lost eventually. And as he was about to devour her, he was reminded that he couldn't, as they were not on stage. She explained to him that he was a hybrid, half human, half Oni, and that if he kept fighting, the Oni would eventually devour him, killing him. She came to strike a deal with the Oni slayer as she revealed herself from the birdcage as Rindou, an immortal with a severed head. She promised to help the Oni slayer extend his life if he could kill her, and she narrated how she became a severed head, which was because a hybrid Oni attacked her and took her body. She told him the person involved was an old foreign man with a cane, and the description was similar to the person who turned the Oni slayer into a hybrid. As they were taking a stroll, Miss Severedhead wanted to know why he kept fighting every day, knowing it would cost him his life as it signified he wanted to die. But the Oni slayer still fought her maid valiantly, like he wanted to live, which got her confused. The Oni slayer, Tsugaru Shinuchi, told her that he was okay with dying while he performed, as it meant he would be able to kill all the lowlifes who watched him from behind the cage, and Miss Severedhead acknowledged him as a maniac. Oni slayer told her he could not fulfill her request to kill her, but he would help her get her body, as it seemed she would want to live if she had her body, and his goal was also to find that same person she described who took away his humanity. She decided to take him up on his offer, as she told him the way to extend his life was to take her bodily fluid, and that was how he was able to get his first kiss. They journeyed together in search of the old fart with the cane as they set off for Europe. The Vague de Folie Mansion, France, was home to a group of vampires on good terms with the humans. They often go hunting as father and son to make a good impression on the humans. That night, they hunted a deer and brought it home, but then they realized that the lock to the storage room had been compromised and the silver stake they took from a hunter had been used on one of them. The father found out it was used on his wife, Hannah, who looked peaceful, like she had reached a state of climax. The news of Hannah's death spread throughout town, and Lord Godard, Hannah's husband, was on his way to meet with a judge when he was surrounded by reporters. He told them how the police had failed him and that he was going to take matters into his own hands by hiring a monster detective, the legendary Oni slayer and Miss Severedhead, as they had become popular in Europe for solving various cases. As they finally arrived at the mansion, they introduced themselves to the family, and Lord Godard was surprised that Rindou was a woman, as he couldn't tell without the boobies. The vampire family was shocked to see she was just a severed head and had a lot of questions for her, wondering how she took a shit, but she went on to investigate the case as that was way more important. Miss Severedhead wanted more information on the family and was told they were a family of 4 with 2 human maids, Giselle and Alfred, who might have relations to the Alfred of the Wayne family. They went over to the murder scene, where they were able to identify that Hannah might have been asleep while she was struck with the silver stake, which was insane. She wanted to know if there was a way for them to touch a silver stake using a cloth. But Lord Godard explained that it would be dumb for them to lay their hands on it, as it would burn them, and that was what the human maids were there for. He further told them that it would take weeks for them to heal from any slight wounds from the silver stake. After finding out that only Lord Godard and Alfred had the keys to the storage room where the silver stake was kept, and with all the information she had received, she made a contracting deduction that the attack came from outside the mansion. Some of the things that contradicted her deduction was that there was no sign that Hana woke up, and with her keen senses, she would have been able to detect her attacker, but did not, which was definitely sus. Miss Ringo also did not understand why the attacker would strike at night, knowing that the vampires were weaker during the day, or how the attacker knew about the silver stake in the storage room and knew where Hana's room was. They were interrupted by Charlotte, their youngest daughter, who was terrified of the Oni Slayer's hideous face.
What is that? What the f*** is that?
They had dinner, and Oni Slayer decided to enjoy himself, as he had not had such a delicacy in his life, even though most of it was blood. Lord Godard was wondering why Miss Severed Head was not eating, and she told him she did not want to add more weight, which made Tsugaru laugh like a maniac. It seemed like the youngest son, Raoul, made a deal with the driver, as they were both acting suspiciously. The eldest son, Claude, saw the detectives as con artists and questioned their credibility. Miss Rindou showed off her deduction skills as she explained to her driver how she found out about his wife, and Claude was impressed, comparing her to Sherlock Holmes. Miss Severed Head wanted to know the whereabouts of Hana on the day of her death after she had dinner, and was told that Hana went to her room while Lord Godard and Claude were in the study room alongside Charlotte, who was playing with her dolls. After that, Lord Godard went hunting, and when he went to get his rifle from the storage room, everything was still in place. She was able to interrogate the remaining members of the family, and from the interrogation, she found out that Claude had gone to his room and was all by himself like a true loner while his mom was being murdered. Raoul, who acted defensive and suspicious, was with Dracula Jr. while he hunted. The maid did her usual chores and sang with Charlotte while she did the laundry, and Alfred was handling the schedules of Lord Godard in the basement alone. From this information, she narrowed down the suspects who had no alibi, Claude and Alfred. Charlotte cried and left the dining table, so they dismissed the interrogation. Miss Severed Head was clueless about who the culprit was, but she suspected their maid, as it would be difficult for Claude to carry out. Claude came by and threatened to snap their necks, even though Miss Severed Head had none. Lord Godard and the detectives went into the forest as they were after the site of the hunter attack, and Lord Godard wanted to let them know they were wasting their time suspecting the family, as he did not pay them to suspect his family. Dracula Jr. later found out that Miss Severed Head was an immortal, and the Oni Slayer was an Oni, as the foolish Oni Slayer admitted it to him. Dracula Jr. was attacked by a hunter, whom he had apprehended and was about to send to his maker, but was stopped by the detectives. Miss Severed Head was able to deduce that the hunter was not the killer of Hana, as the hunter just got in town. They asked the hunter why he attacked Lord Godard, as he was a human ally, and he told them it was to avenge a hunter named Hugo that Dracula Jr. had killed. Miss Severed Head asked if the hunter knew Hugo had a silver stake, and he didn't, as he was figuring out that Hugo might have hidden it in a leather case he had with him. The hunter was then released, and Miss Severed Head told Dracula Jr. to gather the family, as there was no need for them to go into the forest anymore, because the hunter helped her find the culprit. Miss Severed Head called out the family, as she had already found the culprit and wanted to prove it to them. She told them the reasons why it couldn't have been an outsider, which was the fact that Hana did not notice the outsider with her keen senses. The murder did not take place during the day. The bottle was left in the murder scene. The murderer knew the layout of the building and the fact that the silver stake was found in the storage room. Miss Severed Head also wondered how Alfred and Claude were not able to hear the sound of Hana being struck with the silver stake, as they were close to her room during the time of the murder. She deduced that the killer must have used their bare hand to drive the stake into Hana's chest, and wondered why they did not use a hammer instead, as that was the smarter option, since Hana worked with hammers and furniture. Therefore, another item that could be broken with a hammer was used to kill her. As they interrogated the bottle in the murder scene, they noticed that the bottle was empty, as it served as a dud for the holy water they found in the murder scene, which meant the second item used was frozen holy water. The killer struck her with the holy water stake, and it melted around while they took some of her blood and used it on the silver stake as they broke in after Dracula Jr. had taken his rifle and waited till he came back and saw the silver stake. Miss Severedhead then narrowed down the suspect to someone who had no alibi before the time they thought the murder took place. Raoul and the two maids were the suspects, but as the maids were too weak to break a lock, sneak past a vampire without the vampire knowing, and strike a stake through a vampire, Raoul was tagged as the killer. He tried to defend himself as he could not carry the silver stake, and Miss Severedhead agreed that his hands would have been burned as a result, but if he could cut off his fingers, they would grow back.
Nice.
As he was concerned like a smelly rat, he tried to kill Miss Severedhead, but failed as the Oni Slayer overpowered him and took the fight outside. Raoul then confessed that he did it because his dad followed his mum around like a simp and felt disgusted that they were mushy-mushy with the humans as they were the superior beings, so he thought killing her would fix it. Raoul was shown how superior he was as he got his ass handed to him by the Oni Slayer until he was finished. Meanwhile, Miss Severedhead explained that Raoul had planned the murder since Hugo's attack, as he promised to allow Hugo to attack Lord Godard for him to get his stake in the storage room while he held onto the stake case. The holy water was from church since they regularly went there. Miss Severed. It was not the best ending for Lord Godard, as he lost 2 family members and some money to boot. Lupin kidnapped Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, as he planned to steal the penultimate night from the impregnable Phileas Fogg's mansion and needed an assistant. It was a heist only someone crazy would do, and Eric agreed to join in. He sent a message to Phileas Fogg's mansion that he would steal the penultimate night, which prompted him to hire the best hands he could get. The Severedhead crew were in London when they went to a cane shop to try and get more info on their friend, the old fart with the cane, as they stole the information from the list of customers who had bought a cane from the shop. They were about to have a showdown with the mysterious person who caught them, but the cops came just in time and captured them. As they were in the carriage to be taken to jail, Miss Severedhead used her deduction to reveal that some smelly twins were lying about what they stole, and the man next to them jumped in as he wanted to prove he could deduce exactly what they stole. The man revealed himself as Sherlock Holmes, and they were taken to Phileas Fogg's mansion. Meanwhile, the old fart with the cane and his friend were having a little girl tea party in London. The detectives finally arrived at Phileas Fogg's mansion. It was a sturdy mansion, as it seemed like it could not be infiltrated. Eric was back from scouting the mansion and told Lupin how stupid he was for warning them, as they had increased the security and brought 2 popular detectives along. Sherlock Holmes and Rindou did not see eye to eye, as they felt only one detective was needed and bickered like a bunch of kids. They checked for any way Lupin could get in and closed it down. Some agents from Royce's security department came along, which was trouble for Lupin as they were fanatic monster exterminators. They were taken to the basement where the penultimate night was located, and as they saw it, they could tell how precious the diamond was. The diamond was a synthetic diamond, and they thought it would not be worth that much, as it was not a natural diamond. Phileas Fogg then told them the history of the diamond, which he obtained 20 years ago from a friend, and was obtained from a 14th century ruin. He was given it along with the safe, in which he was curious to find what was inside. After 10 years, he finally opened it. That was how he found the diamond, and he was told it had a very rare composition. It also had something written on it, which was a poorly written poem. In the afternoon, during the tea party with his squad, he realized that Lupin had caused him more problems as he was after the penultimate night he had wanted. He noticed some familiar faces that he was going to meet soon. Miss Severedhead already figured out how she planned to stop Lupin, as the Oni Slayer was there acting like an idiot. The next morning, the Oni Slayer started his day acting like a retard, and everyone was fed up with him. The Oni Slayer went to get some food, and the maid was thinking of bailing out as she got bored of hanging with them. She suggested they go out and explore London, and Miss Severedhead recommended seeing Madame Tussauds wax museum, as she was an old fart. Later that night, Watson visited Sherlock as they deliberated on their plan to keep the penultimate night safe, when Mycroft, Sherlock's brother, came in and was able to find out it was an imposter all along. Meanwhile, Oni Slayer and the squad were heading toward the wax museum, which he did not have interest in, and as the cage seemed an awful bit quiet, He checked and found out he had the wrong birdcage and got a Super Saiyan punch from the maid.
Emotional, damn it!
At Sherlock's, the imposter revealed himself to be Lupin, who was quite flashy as he escaped through the window, and a few moments later he came across Miss Severed Head's maid, who was looking for her master, and he decided to help her as Lupin thought he was a true gentleman, but was causing problems for Eric. Mycroft warned Sherlock not to let his guard down, as Lupin was not the only threat, and told him about the Royce agent's goal, which was the eradication of all supernaturals, and that the penultimate night was a beacon to finding the werewolves, as they could allow Lupin to steal the diamond. Then after, they could capture him, therefore retrieving the diamond and putting the blame on Lupin. Later that night, the person who took Miss Severed Head found out he had the wrong cage and freaked out, dumping her on the road. Her pretty face was smashed by the dumb twins who took her, as they had planned to sell her for a fortune. Shizuki searched for her master. She used her Sharingan to spot her master in the dumb twin car and chased after them. Tsugaru, the Oni Slayer, found her and chased after them as he used his Spider-Man skills to navigate at the top of the buildings. He saved her, and the maid found out she had been riding with Lupin the whole time. As the Oni Slayer bragged about being stronger than Lupin, Lupin brought out some weird marbles and used them to win against the Oni Slayer. It was almost time for the fateful encounter with Lupin, as everyone was on their feet. They wondered where Miss Severed Head and the squad were, but they had their plan to guard the above-ground areas, and Royce's agent decided to guard the above-ground areas. As everything was perfect, they decided to lock down the basement. A few moments later, someone infiltrated the north building, and a guard's uniform was stolen. Sherlock decided to shoot the lock so that Lupin wouldn't have any lock to open, guaranteeing their safety. Unfortunately, Sherlock made the dumbest plan ever, as the room was flooded with water, and no one had Aquaman's ability to save them, as they had trapped themselves. Everyone in the basement was in quite the pickle, as they were about to drown due to Sherlock's dumb idea. They decided to play the battle of endurance as they waited till the water stopped flowing in. Fatima, a Royce agent, was sent to break down the door so they could escape, and when she freed them, the safe and diamond were gone, as Lupin kept to his word and stole it at the exact time he stated. They wondered how he got to the safe, which seemed impossible, so they went upstairs to wallow in their loss. As they got upstairs and dried up, Sherlock caught Lupin in his disguise and figured out how he stole the safe, as he used a rope through the vent when the water went through the basement. Lupin did not care as he had already gotten the safe, but Sherlock made him aware that he had hidden the diamond in his companion's pocket. As he checked and did not find it, Sherlock felt like a clown as Lupin stole the diamond and escaped with a smoke bomb. Lupin met up with Eric, who had the safe but was unaware that Miss Rindou hid within it, as Lupin was smacked, and the Oni Slayer found them. She told Lupin how she used his ignorance of her against him, as she made him think they were normal humans and made Oni Slayer lose their earlier face-off on purpose. Lupin was ready to fight as he had Eric with him, but he could not be any more wrong, as Eric ran for his life as he had accepted the El maidson chased after Eric, and Shitface from the Royce agent came to join the party, who was clowning that he could win against Lupin and Oni Slayer. The old fart with the cane came with his squad to join the party as they felt left out, killing anyone on sight. And Carmilla, one of the old fart's friends, used her huge cake to torment the others. She and the magicians created a diversion, while the others searched for the penultimate night. Meanwhile, Oni Slayer continued his fight, as he did not care about the commotion as they fought for the diamond. Eric had thought he had escaped, but Fatima came to stop him with her crossbows. Even though he did not have the diamond with him, he sneaked around like a rat, but was later shot down like one. Sherlock and the others met up with the magicians, who put all his victims to flame, but found out it was just a lame trick he used. Meanwhile, Carmilla was about to bless a troubled soul with her cake, but Maidson came to interrupt them as she almost kicked her head off her neck. Maidson only cared about the phantom and was about to leave, but Carmilla could not bear the disrespect, so she stopped her and threatened to kill Maidson's master. So she took it personal and decided to bring the fight to her. Oni Slayer and the others continued to fight for the diamond, as neither of them was ready to give in. Lupin and the Oni Slayer decided to work together, as they were tired of Shitface and his obsession with dirt. The Oni Slayer acted as a decoy, while Lupin dropped a huge boulder on him that sent his lights out. While this was going on, Fatima was having some difficulty locating our rat friend because he blended in well with the background noise and was scared she was going to be killed. Somewhere in Phileas Fogg's mansion, Maid-san managed to maintain her calm in the face of Carmilla's allure, but it was only a matter of time before she got trapped in Carmilla's cake as she made contact with her lips. At Sherlock's end, Magician-san was giving them a tough time with his lame tricks, as Sherlock and his friends were running out of bullets. So Miss Rindou distracted him as she asked why they needed the diamond. Sherlock used the opportunity to strike Magician-san as he used the Uno reverse card at him. Magician-san was going to take the antidote, but the old fart with the cane came to interrupt, and it was revealed that he was Professor Moriarty. Meanwhile, Oni Slayer had his hands full as Fatima and Eric joined the fray, and Shitface was able to free himself from the rubble. A menacing figure then appeared and took the diamond, and Shitface was scared, so he told Fatima to retrieve the diamond, and she was split into pieces. Shitface was also one shot, and Lupin was not ready to see his maker yet, as he told Eric they needed to escape. Moriarty was building a stronger criminal organization with a bunch of mixed-breed humans. That was an idea he got from his apprentice, who wanted a stronger body mixed with monsters. He conducted different experiments with the Oni and Immortal, as their abilities piqued his interest. But most of the test subjects went completely mad as the Oni overtook their human sides. This was not the case for Jack the Reaper, as he was the perfect subject, as he could take on as many monsters as possible. At the time he had the ability of an Oni, Immortal and a vampire, and needed the diamond so they could implant a werewolf within him. In the chapel, Jack remembered Oni Slayer as a test subject who ran away when he was still an assistant of Moriarty and thought he was dead. Oni Slayer began to feel exhausted from his fight with Jack, and as Jack had already retrieved the diamond, he found no reason to continue the fight as Oni Slayer was not worth it, so he signaled his members and left. Carmilla was about to give Maid-san the best time she had ever had, but still resisted and was about to be finished off. But as soon as Carmilla saw Jack's signal, she had to leave. The detectives and the others all regrouped and were exhausted from the fight, and it was another L they had to deal with as they lost the diamond, and Lupin escaped. The Oni Slayer gave them hope, as he was able to retrieve the diamond from Jack while he was distracted and full of himself, and Jack ended up showing Moriarty a bag full of nothing. They cracked the code on the diamond and were able to find the location of the werewolves. A group of humans wanted to kill the werewolf and her daughter, so they hid in a tower and attempted to flee. Unfortunately, hiding in the tower was a bad idea, as the tower was set ablaze, but the werewolf protected her daughter with her body. Oni Slayers were on their way to the location where the werewolves lived as they went deep into the mountain, and it wouldn't be a normal day without Oni Slayer acting like a retard. The Oni Slayer had never seen a werewolf before and inquired from Miss Severed Head, and she told him she had when various tests were done on her to find out what manner of beast could harm her. She began to praise the werewolf race as if she had a crush on them. As they were moving on, they came across a man who looked like Zeke and was as crazy as him. He recognized them as the monster detectives and sought their help. Hulendorf was quite a gloomy village, as everyone kept to themselves, and as the mood was getting boring, Miss Severedhead asked about the incident, and Zeke-kun told her it started a year ago. It was a rainy day, and the mayor's granddaughter disappeared after going to fetch water. The next day, when they found her body, it was unrecognizable, and the same event occurred multiple times, and young girls were the victims as it seemed the werewolf was a pedo. Zeke-kun told her he had never seen a werewolf around the village when he checked, but the same event occurred recently. He brought Oni Slayer and the squad to the church where the victim and some villagers were having a squabble. They introduced themselves, and when they noticed Miss Severed Head, they were about to attack her but later gave her a chance. They went to the recent victim's room to investigate, as they found the room messy. She asked Zeke-kun to bring the bite marks from the previous victims, as she wanted to compare them. She wanted to know if anything was missing in the room, and they told her everything was intact. Maid-san threw a pillow into the chimney as they wanted to verify something, while Oni Slayer was left sad as it was his favorite pillow that was used. The father of the victim had enough of their questions as they seemed useless. Miss Severed Head was able to conclude that the culprit was sane when they carried out the kidnapping and made it look like they were insane, as the culprit brought a bag and wrapped Louise, since there was no blood outside the window and there was no blanket missing. They began to act suspicious, and then Miss Severed Head decided to visit the mayor. They asked the mayor where the werewolves lived, and he told them at the waterfall's base, but after they named the location they got from the diamond, he knew they were seriously looking for the werewolf. He did not want to tell them how to get to the werewolf village, so Miss Severed Head made a deal with the mayor to uncover the mystery of the incident while he told them how to find the werewolf village, which the mayor agreed to. At a nearby train station, some Royce agents came to town walking around with their bloated faces.
Wow! Beautiful!
Miss Severed Head deduced that the culprit was one of the villagers and wanted to hear from the mayor if he agreed, but he was certain no one in the village was the culprit. The mayor told them there was only one way to differentiate a werewolf from a human when they were in their human form, which was to test how big their balls were, their keen senses. The outsiders in the village were Zeke-kun, Knut, and Alma, and they all passed the tests. The mayor told them how werewolves evolved, and that the latest generation was immune to silver and holy water. As the werewolves seemed invincible, the mayor told them they could strike them in their human form, target their eyes or mouths, and burn them, which was what they did in their previous werewolf case. Miss Severed Head wanted to know how they figured out that the previous outsiders were werewolves, and he told them it was Louis who caught them as she was their beacon of hope. They met Knut to gain more information on the incident. He told them how he found the woman in the forest in bad shape and was pregnant. She told him her name was Rosa and that she ran away from home as he realized how he was thinking with his dick for him not to notice she was suspicious as he brought her to the village. She gave birth to Yuta a few months later and was about to propose to her until Louis exposed them and they were killed. Knut told them Louis found out about them as Rosa mistook her for Yuta and told her if she smelled a pungent flower not to show her ears, and as she thought it was strange, she tried it out on Yuta. He understood why they were suspects, but he claimed to be honest and believed Zeke-kun was too. Oni Slayer and the others visited Alma, who also believed the culprit was not from the village and claimed it was the work of a wolf, which she alone saw every morning, which was not suspicious at all. After speaking with her, Miss Severed Head was able to deduce that she lied about coming from a family of artists and going to art school. They scouted the burnt remains of the tower, and Oni Slayer's spider senses were tingling. Later that evening, they met up with Zeke-kun and inquired more about Louis, and as Zeke-kun was narrating a story about her, Oni Slayer only cared about eating the food served. They were interrupted by the shady Royce agent, but reached an agreement because the werewolves were their main goal, and they could only get information on their whereabouts if Miss Severed Head solved the mystery, which was the deal she made with the mayor. As the night went by, Alma was acting suspicious, which made the villagers suspect her even more as they were ready to cause violence. She confessed to her crime, transformed into a werewolf, and ran into the woods. They chased after her, and Oni Slayer fought against the werewolf, but it proved to be tough. The werewolf was smart as it used Miss Severed Head as bait to take out Maid-san, who risked her life to save her. The bite marks on Tsugaru's leg were the same as those of the previous victims, which indicated Alma was the true culprit, but she was able to escape. As they fulfilled their part of the deal, the mayor told them to go to the burned-down tower at dawn and point the diamond towards the sun, and the stone would show them the way to the werewolf village. They followed the instructions given and were able to experience a magnificent sight as they journeyed towards the werewolf village, but unknowingly they were being watched. Maid-san woke up and found herself naked with a bunch of pretty girls. After learning that the werewolves had discovered her floating upstream and saved her, she questioned whether she had an orgy. Her body was freezing up, so they slept with her to warm her up. Maid-san was still clueless about where she was even after she saw someone transform, so they had to break it to her that she was in the werewolf village. The werewolf girls kept calling Maid-san a culprit, and she wanted to know why, so Nora told her about the incident in their village as young girls were killed during rainy days, which seemed like deja vu for Maid-san, as it was a similar case they solved. Maid-san told them about Miss Severed Head as she could solve the case for them, as she was useless to them, so they told her to leave. But as she saw they were taking tea, she knew she would finally be able to show her skills. Nora planned on distracting the men with her hoe skills, and then they would use the opportunity to escape. The plan was set in motion, and it was already bound for failure, as Nora's hoe skill was not enough. As they were about to escape, their cart broke down, and Maid-san was caught as her initial attempt to escape was rendered useless. The mayor of the village came by and sentenced her to death, but she was saved when Nora's friend told the mayor that Nora saved her and wanted to hear her out, so the mayor considered hearing her out. She was on trial, and her judge was the mayor, which made the trial a bit unfair as it would always end in her demise. The villagers all agreed she was the killer, and Nora's friend did not help matters as she revealed she had a gun with her. They heard a gunshot that came from the forest, and as they went to check it out, they found out Nora had been killed, as she was the latest victim of the serial killer. The mayor still blamed Maid-san, even though it was clear she was not the culprit as she had gone senile. Maid-san thought she could do the Miss Severed Head job but failed woefully. Oni Slayer, in the meantime, was more irritating than usual and made Miss Severed Head wish she could die. Fortunately, Frankenstein from the banquet squad ambushed them. Frankenstein saved Tsugaru and Rindou from the annoying Royce agents, as he wanted to know where the werewolf village was located. They called a truce for a brief moment as Miss Severed Head was in search of Maid-san. In Wolfenhell, they held a burial for Nora, and around then, Tsugaru found his way to Vera through a trail of Shizuku's clothes. Vera could recognize them from the description she was given as she took them to the Wolfenhell where Maid-san was imprisoned. As they got to Shizuku's location, Oni Slayer wanted a reward from her and was given a poke in the eye. He gave her clothes but kept her underwear as he tried to save it for later. Miss Severed Head got all the details about Shizuku's time in Wolfenhell, and Maid-san wanted to know the results of her investigation as she felt stupid with her wrong deductions. Oni Slayer asked the werewolves if they knew Alma, but they had no clue who that was. They left Maid-san and went to investigate the crime that had happened there as they went to the forest where Nora was killed. Miss Severed Head observed the crime scene and found a secret passage that was the same one the killer used to carry out their crime. She told Tsugaru how she figured it out. As she heard they did not hear gunshots, she was able to deduce that the girls were killed in an enclosed place. And since the werewolf could not detect them, it had to be underground. They found Gustav's stolen gun underground, which was the weapon of the culprit. And as they went deeper, they found Alma's dead body. As they went further, they found an exit, which led them back to Hollendorf, and Miss Severed Head told Tsugaru that she knew there was another passage, as she deduced that Rosa used another entrance, as she could not have climbed a hill with how injured she was. Zeke-kun coincidentally found and took them to Louise's dead body, where Miss Severed Head asked how the parents treated Louise when she was younger than 4 years old, and the mother confessed that they abandoned their daughter during a flower-picking event as they took her out of her wheelchair and left. Later that evening, she came back with Yuta, and they saved her, and that was how Louise became the hero of the town. Miss Severed Head told Tsugaru that the most important clue to finding the culprit was Louise's window, and they went back to Wolfeny. But the useless Royce agents caught them and reported to the villagers like a bunch of pussies. Camilla was having fun as she made the werewolf girls have the time of their lives. Vera deceived the guards stationed in the prison as she helped Maid-san escape, and Tsugaru went out to shut the mouths of the werewolves as they were being too loud. The villagers from Hollendorf and the Royce agent invaded the home of the werewolves, and they massacred them in cold blood. Maid-san was ordered to go save Kaya, but as she found her, she appeared as if she had already reached the state of climax, as Carmilla showed her true ecstasy. Magician San fought the cowgirl while Shizuku fought her arch-nemesis Carmilla, as they yelled at the top of their voices like they were having a shouting contest. Frankenstein fought the faggot from the Royce Company, and was having a tough time as he was left in bondage, but Tsugaru came to help, as he soccer-punched the faggot's face to another dimension to repay the favor. They teamed up and finished the faggot, but Oni Slayer was there for the diamond, as Frankenstein had promised to return it. He asked whether Rindou's body was safe, and Frankenstein guaranteed him it was safe and invited him to come over like he was confessing his love for him. Cowgirl was having a face-off with Magician San, and one of her bullets got to him. Meanwhile, Shizuku fought Carmilla without panties as Tsugaru had it in his possession. Maid-san thought the fight was over but was taken to Carmilla's world of pleasure, which she finally gave in. And as Cowgirl went to check on the Magician San's body, she did not know she had fallen for his cheap tricks, as she was poisoned, and Magician San left.
Stop it. Get some help.
Later that night, Oni Slayer got impatient as he wanted to know who the culprit was but was given another job to handle. Then Rindou went to meet the villagers as she was about to reveal the culprit. She figured out that the culprit was Nora of Wolfenhell, Louise of Hollendorf, and also Jutta, as they were the same person. Jutta wanted to know how she figured it out, and Rindou told her, since she entered Louise's room, as a werewolf in its therianthrope form could not fit in the window, it meant she went through the window in her wolf form, and if she did, it meant she did not carry anyone. When she saw Alma turned into a werewolf, she knew it was not Alma, but Jutta. As Rindou entered the tunnel, she found an open space which was where the murder took place, and it couldn't have been done by a human because if it were, they would need light, which would leave them covered in moth scale, so only a werewolf would have been able to do so, as Nora's dead body had no scales. There was a sign that someone lived in the tunnel for 18 months, but the walls of the cave were the height of Tsugaru's thighs, meaning the person staying there could not stand, which was Louise. Miss Severedhead was able to conclude the investigation when they dug Nora's grave and did not find a body. Jutta lived 2 lives as Louise and Nora to exact her revenge on both villages for what they did to her and her mom. She tried to escape but was caught by Tsugaru, but Miss Severedhead decided to set her free as she got her deduction wrong because Jutta committed the crime to save the werewolves in the village from the village's custom, not for revenge.